This is Brooke Warner, and I'm here with Linda Joy Myers. Hi, Linda Joy.
Hi, Brooke, and I want to welcome everybody also. We're really pleased to have you with us tonight to learn about kickstarting your memoir.
Yeah, and we're also so pleased by the turnout. You know, the number of people that signed up for tonight's course is pretty fantastic. We have about 400 people signed up and already nearly 100 people joining us tonight from all over the place. I'd love, just to get a kind of gauge of who's with us, if we could put into the questions box, just put where you're calling in from so that we can see from all over the place where people are coming. LA, Boston, Michigan. Yay, Michigan.
Toronto. Oh, several Canadian, quite a few Canadians. Yay, Ohio.
That's
Virginia,
great.
North Carolina, Arizona.
All over the place.
It was fun.
Yeah, that is fun. That's great. Alameda, we got some local people. Hi, peeps, because Linda Joy and I are both over here in Berkeley area, East Bay. All right, wonderful.
Ireland.
Welcome.
We have Ireland and Holland. Wow, yay.
And Ireland. Very nice. All right, this is fantastic. Thanks, everyone, for answering that. We're going to introduce ourselves quickly here and tell you a little bit about who we are.
All right, who we are. I'm Linda Joy Myers, and I'm the president of the National Association of Memoir Writers. And also I've written some books on memoir writing and my own memoir. My memoir is called Don't Call Me Mother, A Daughter's Journey from Abandonment to Forgiveness. And I have two books on memoir techniques, The Power of Memoir and The Journey of Memoir. And Brooke and I teach another course, which we'll tell you about later.
Yeah, I've got the resident memoir experts on hand here, and I'm Brooke. I'm the publisher of She Writes Press and the founder of Warner Coaching, which is my coaching practice where I help authors get published, and that is my principal focus actually in both of my companies. My book is called What's Your Book? And I also have a background in traditional publishing. I come out of 8 years as the executive editor at Seal Press, where I like to say, 85% of what I worked on was memoir, because Seal is just so memoir-centric and a really fantastic place for aspiring women memoirists to get published. So that is who we are. And yes, we teach this long course called Write Your Memoir in 6 months. And later on tonight, we're going to be sharing with you a little bit about what that is and a little bit about our fall intro classes. And so we welcome you tonight to learn about kickstarting, which is why everyone is here. So we're going to start.
We know that the trick with memoir writing is A, getting started, and B, continuing to stay on the writing journey. So we wanted to address some of those problems that memoir writers run into on this call.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to jam-pack quite a bit of information into tonight's call, and so we're anxious to get started. And the issue, that we're going to open with is this question of why writers abandon their memoirs and how to get your groove back. I mean, there are multiple reasons, of course, and I'm not going to go into all of them tonight, but it's going to segue a little bit into Linda Joy's muddy middle, which is, in fact, a phrase that she coined that means the muddy middle of your memoir, where, as we're discovering with the students who are taking our long course, sometimes the muddy middle starts right after the first page. You're so jazzed to get started, and then all of a sudden you confront all kinds of walls, and those can be psychological, and they can be time barriers. And we've decided together, that those are the primary two. There's lots of other ones, but for the most part, they really are psychological and time. And people have very busy lives. It's hard to prioritize your writing. It's why we've discovered in our long course the value of accountability in your writing, the value of having a group who is paying attention to what you're doing. So those of you who are in writing groups are probably benefiting a lot from just the accountability, or maybe you have a writing coach. But there's these places, where even despite being excited about what we're writing or knowing that we have to write, we still let go of our memoirs. And I have worked with so many clients over the years, who have literally talked about their memoirs as abandoned children in a way, that they don't really know why they let go of it, or they don't completely understand it, but the longer they stay away, not only is it harder to come back to, but it's also the voice of the memoir gets louder. And that's kind of an interesting little conundrum to face, because you're ignoring it, but it's chasing you, and it's really more and more in your space. And I think that's why the Kickstarter class is such an important class, because really, if your memoir is calling to you, you can't let it go, you're not really paying attention to it in the way you think you ought to pay attention to it or want to, there are lots of ways to get your groove back. And so some of those ways, and this is, so much around why Linda Joy and I have decided to teach classes together. Like I said, accountability, having a group that cares about memoir in the same way that you do, having people in your life who tend to their own writing and help you tend to your writing. Even those of us with the most supportive partners and families, if they're not writers and they don't really understand why you're called to it, it can be very difficult to prioritize your writing. And it's not necessarily over your family, but I talk and write a lot about enrolling your family, explaining to them why it's so important that you write. And then also just understanding your own psychological barriers, the things that come up for you that keep you in a pattern of not writing. Sometimes it's simply fear that what you have to say is not going to matter, that it's a waste of time. These are just some of the critical voices that get into memoirists' head. And I think that, unfortunately for memoirists, because our stories are personal stories, we suffer more than other genre writers, and therefore we need more emotional support. And that is something that shouldn't feel bad, it should feel good, and to acknowledge, yes, I need the emotional support because this is really intense. I'm drudging up all kinds of memories, and maybe they're hard and painful memories. Even if they're good memories, it can be hard to relive good times sometimes. It can be hard just to sort of sort out all of your emotions around it. So those are number one, above all else, is accountability. Number two is having other people who care. And number three is enrolling your partner. Those are the three that I'm going to mention for tonight, although there are many more. And I'm going to segue into letting Linda Joy tell you a bit more about her muddy middle and 5 secrets for getting past it.
Thank you, Brooke. Well, I've been teaching memoir writing in various forms for about 15 years, and the process that I watch people go through is kind of got an arc to it, just like a story does. Everybody jumps in very excited to write their story and explore their memories and their past and bring the people they have known alive through writing the story about them, and then they hit some kind of stickiness or a wall or whatever, however it affects people in different ways. And so there are several. There's at least 5 things that happen, but there's ways to get past all these. So I'm going to go through those. And Brooke already mentioned the voices that happen in your head. So this inner critic voice is sometimes also what we call the outer critic voice of the family. So maybe you've enrolled your family and wanting them to support you. And as we know, families come in all shapes, sizes, and colors and psychology, And so for some people, it might feel threatening to have you by writing a memoir. And so, you have to assess whether or not you want to tell your family while you're in the creative, raw phase, what you're doing. You want to make sure that you can feel safe to capture your story the way you remember it, to write down your truths the way that you experience them. So you need to really check out what your inner critic is saying. Maybe it's saying you're boring, or maybe it's saying you don't know how to write. And there's lots of ways to make all that better, and we do that. I do that in my own writing, and Brooke does too, and we also help everyone that we're coaching in all of our different ways that we're teaching to address these issues of the inner critic. I have some inner critic exercises I have people do, and list making of what the critics are saying is very, very helpful, and writing it down and getting it out of your head. The other thing to do that's helpful is to write some actual affirmations So you write down sentences that help you get past or at least remember something positive about your story, your memories, why you're writing your memoir, why you're excited about it, what you want to share with the world, and what you want to explore within yourself. A memoir is a journey. It's usually an inward journey of some kind. Even if you're writing a fun memoir or one with a lot of humor, a memoir is a very personal journey. It's a story about real people, and you're writing the truth as best you can. So it's a little fraught with vulnerability. And so we need the support that we can get from our writing group and from our coaches and from our writing friends and from the affirmations that we can just put up on the wall saying, keep writing, or I will write one scene today. You can put your goals up. And it's very helpful to make an actual structure for yourself as a writer. So another way to get past the muddy middle is to free write, to free yourself from whatever it is that's going on. It's sort of like journal writing, but maybe there's certain issues that have come up once you've started your memoir, and you need to explore them. You don't know whether they'll go in the story or not, so just sit down and write it all out. Let your writing process be your friend, and create like a journal online or by hand, however you write best. One of the things that, of course, 2 of my books are about how writing is part of a healing process. I have a 30-year background as a therapist, so that's part of why that's been really interesting to me, because both therapy and writing memoir and life stories are about writing one's life and looking at one's life through new lenses. So a healing process or some kind of transformational process can be triggered by running into new memories or discovering new stories. And this is very important for you to to explore and to feel that it's okay to explore that and not know quite yet what all you're going to put in your final draft. In fact, we ask you not to worry about any publishing or final drafts early on or most of the way through the process, because it's just very distracting. We talk about all this in our courses that we teach, of course, in more detail than we can do tonight. So I already mentioned the affirmations, and so you can create a poster board. You can say, my memoir is important right now. You can say write, W-R-I-T-E, or R-I-G-H-T, now. Other phrases that have meaning to you, my grandchildren are going to love to read this one day, or, I'm free to write my truths in a safe way right now. I mean, there's lots of different things you can say. Model it after what you need. And the last secret of getting past this sticky place or getting lost with your memoir is to write scenes one after the other. And it's part of the craft of memoir writing to understand what a scene is. Just briefly, it's a certain moment and place in time where something significant happens. And it can be very helpful to just write down a list of 10 or 12 significant and important scenes and write them one after the other. Just do the best you can and get them down and get them out of you. And after you've done that, you will have learned a lot about yourself and about the writing process and about how to get back into your memoir and keep going. Brooke, anything to add?
No, so great. Those are all such good tips, and I encourage each of you to choose one of those and see where it takes you, and know that we're recording tonight, and so you can revisit this video tomorrow and whenever, because I think that all of those are just great things to have in your back pocket for just trying one of them if you're stuck, and then working through each and every one of them maybe and seeing what's going to help the most. So I love it. Thank you. All right, so we're talking about strategies for prioritizing your writing next. And, this one is tough, admittedly. For those of you, kind of dovetailing off of what I was talking about earlier with regard to the reasons writers abandon their memoirs, you have to find ways to prioritize your writing. And everyone who is on the call cares enough about memoir writing, and the stories that they want to tell, that you're here tonight, you're dedicating this time, you're listening in and thinking about it. And sometimes that's all we do is think about it. And the more that we think about it and the farther away we get from that writing, the more it feels like a burden, right, which I was talking about earlier. And so there has to be some very concrete ways for you to prioritize it in your life. And I have an exercise that I do with my clients that is a pie chart. I'll ask them when they're really struggling to prioritize their writing, where are you spending your time? This could be a super rough pie chart. It doesn't have to be very detailed or anything, but just percentage-wise, family, work, working out, social time, what are the things that you are doing? And the clients who spend a lot of time with it and think about where am I really spending my time, maybe who even track their time for a week, are generally pretty surprised by the places where they're kind of wasting time maybe, where they can, in fact, carve out more time than they thought they could for their writing. I know for myself, and I write about this in my book, and I've written about it since, is that when I was writing my own book, I did as an experiment, I wrote it in 6 months because I wanted to see what would it feel like to generate that kind of content over 6 months in preparation for this course that Linda, Joy, and I teach. And even though I wasn't writing a memoir, I still was having to sit my butt in the chair and do the writing when oftentimes I didn't want to. And one of the biggest sacrifices I realized for myself was that I had a lot of downtime with my family that involved sitting on the couch watching our favorite TV shows. And so while it was a little bit hard at times to say, no, I'm going to choose to go into the room or, go into some secluded place to write, I found that over many weeks, it wasn't actually that big of a sacrifice because as it turns out, we were doing this, like 3 to 4 times a week. And it wasn't that hard of a thing to miss out on because I was still doing it, right? And so it's really important just to see, like that was for me, and your thing might be whatever, but where can you, where are you kind of in a habit? Where are you habitually doing something that you can shift your routine a little bit? And I also have a client recently who said, working out is really, really, really important to me. But I realized that I'm actually going to have to pare down my workout schedule a little bit if I want to finish this book. And so that's a hard sacrifice for her because I'm not suggesting that your memoir writing is more important than your physical health. But what I am suggesting is that, like, for someone like her who was feeling like she needed to work out every single day, shifting her schedule around so that she's working out 4 days a week and writing 3 days a week has really turned out to be something beneficial, and that is helping her to complete her book. And now she's close to the finish line and saying, this is actually really great because finishing her book has contributed to her mental health as well. So all of this, of course, is about balance, which is why I chose this Zen person sitting on top of this book. And part of that is just getting a little bit real about how you're spending your time. And another thing that I did when I was writing my book was that I came up with an excuse list. I actually shared this on a YouTube video, and I did it in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way just to share with people, look, these are my excuses. Some of them were totally legitimate excuses, like I have a kid, it's hard to find time. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to necessarily sacrifice time with my son, but it does mean that occasionally, and I've done this recently, I took a whole day to write. I collaborated with my partner. We said, look, we're going to drop him off with his nanny for a full day, and just do it. And it was tough, and in fact, it was a little bit painful because I had to pay, for a full day of babysitting. But in that case, that was where I was able to carve out that time. And so, is it a sacrifice? In certain ways, yes, but it's also a gift to yourself. And I think, especially for those of us who are caretaking others, whether those are our parents or our children or whomever in our life, it can be really hard to realize that sometimes making a selfish decision is actually a very healthy decision. So that's just a little tidbit on that. And we're sharing just little samples. Each and every one of these things, Linda, Joy, and I could probably do an entire hour on. So we're just gonna move along. And we do, exactly. We're gonna move along and keep sharing here.
Mm-hmm. Right. So the thing about writing and learning, or learning anything really, is that we often don't realize what we don't know. And Brooke coaches people to get published, and I coach people too on the process of writing, how the process of writing and healing, and also help them get to the level of assessing how they want to publish their book. And what we both find out is that that there are gaps, of course, as with all of us, in what people know about writing or writing a memoir, or what's needed to consider a book ready to be published. And so there's nothing to be ashamed of or embarrassed about, but it is about being open to realizing that if you've been working pretty much on your own, or you haven't studied writing very much, or read that many writing books, for instance, there's going to be things you just wouldn't know, and it's okay. So it's important to do some of this research to look at, well, what makes a good book. You can Google just about anything on earth at this point and find an article about it. You can go to our websites and read articles. We have your Write Your Book in 6 months.com, where we have a bunch of articles that you can read. On my websites, namw.org, there are articles and blog posts all over the place that you can read about craft, and some free events that you can join every year if you aren't ready to become a member or anything. You don't have to do that to get some resources available to you. Be open wherever you are. There's many writing websites and blogs where you can find out information about plot, on character development, on all these different things that you need to learn. I found that character development is one of the easier things to develop, and by character we mean these real life people that you actually knew, which makes some people gulp, like, oh, gulp. That's my aunt, and what is she going to think about being in my memoir? And remember, you're not going to tell her yet. You're just going to explore your story for a while. But there's some fun ways to do that character exploration, like finding photographs and writing from a photograph, writing a character portrait using a photograph. Write about, what does the person look like, how did they walk, how did they talk, what were some of the favorite things that they did or said. Those are a little easier for us to do as writers and as people. We have found that the most challenging thing for most writers, including memoir writers, is understanding about structure. And by that we mean, how does a book progress? What expectations does a reader have as they go through the book? Have you thought about that? What do you mean, expectations? How do you set it up so that you can help the reader have the expectations that you want them to have, and proceed through the book meeting those expectations as you go along? And again, you want the reader to be satisfied, or they will close the book, and you don't want that. Now, many of these things in your very early drafts, you really can't worry about them too much. You need to focus on your story. But we believe that there's a layered process for the learning. And so you might be learning raw things way ahead of where you're actually writing, but they get seeded into your mind. Just like in a course, you learn some math stuff. You don't understand it, but at least you go through the process, and eventually you absorb it and integrate it. And learning writing is the same thing. So in the muddy middle, which, as Brooke said, I mean, sometimes by chapter 2 people go, gosh, I'm already in the muddy middle. It's more of one of our students said, it's more of a state of mind. It isn't necessarily a chronological thing like in the middle of the book. It's a state of mind of, how am I proceeding? How can I make intelligent decisions about what to write next, and what to write next, and how to pay attention to what's needed to create a book. So again, as the phrase on this slide says, how to assess what you don't know that you need to know. That's part of what Brooke and I teach, and what we put in the website articles, is to give people a glance at what they need to learn that they don't know, whether it's from us or from somebody else or from a book. And so we just encourage you that however it feels best for you to do that. And of course, we're available to help you, and we want to help you, but there might be various ways that you want to do your learning, and we just encourage you to enroll in it, absorb this information, and keep on writing. Get your book done.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is our fundamental thing at the end of the day, whether you work with us or work with someone else. You know, both of us are such champions of memoir writing and memoir writers. And this process that Linda Joy just shared, this layering, I mean, that is how our longer course is successful and why it functions, is that you're learning new things all the time, and you're not always going to be necessarily ready or open for a certain skill set. You know, it may be more advanced than where you're at the moment, but you keep going and you keep practicing, because there really is a lot of craft to know. There's quite a lot of craft to know in writing a good memoir, and that's why it's a learning curve, and that's why it takes time and dedication, and why it's important to be able to carve out the time in your life to do it on at least a semi-regular basis. So that's what we're trying to make space for. All right. So confronting what's holding you back and finding ways to find your passion again, to find your voice again. You know, this question of confronting what's holding you back, I think for memoir writers, so much is about owning your right to write your memoir, that you're allowed to, that it's your story, that there are people out there who want to hear from you, who need to hear from you. You know, so often in my own coaching of writers, I found that there are two primary reasons that people write memoir. The first is because they can't not write it. You know, they're being called to write it. Like I said, the voice will not leave them alone. When they try to abandon their memoir, it only gets louder. There is just this deep and compelling urge to tell the story that needs to be told. And when you're that kind of writer, you know, Linda Joy and I really believe that there's a story that needs to be told, that wants to be told, and the book knows what it wants to be. And your job is kind of like, you know, Michelangelo in carving out David. You know, he said at some point that David was in there, he just had to remove what didn't belong. And that's really where you can get to with your memoir, you know, that you're a guide of sorts that is just there to shape the story. And when you tap into that place where that's what you're doing, you're in flow. And we teach and we write about flow, and it's an exciting place to be. And probably each and every one of you who, you know, is addicted to memoir, you know, despite maybe having a troubled relationship with it, you've probably experienced it, because that is the thing that keeps you coming back. You know, it feels amazing to be in that place. And the other reason that people write is because they wanted something when they were going through a certain experience that they couldn't find. And so they're writing the book that they wish had been there for them when they were going through whatever experience they're going through. And so if you're that person too, your reasons sometimes are altruistic. You know, sometimes they're really genuinely based in wanting to help others, and that's a very powerful reason to write a memoir. And also, you know, it has a similar kind of calling to it, because you have been called forth, you know, by something stronger than yourself to give an offering. And so both of those reasons are incredibly compelling and powerful, and that is, you know, sometimes it's coming from a higher place. And it is important to confront what's holding you back, because when something is coming from a higher place, it's stronger than your own self-perceived limitations. And it's really important that you listen to the higher place and try to make space for that to come through, rather than listening to the small voice of your inner and outer critics that are constantly trying to manipulate you and keep you safe by telling you all kinds of stories. You know, whether the story is no one cares, it's not good enough, or maybe the story is you've worked really hard, you should kick back, you shouldn't worry about this, or maybe the story is, and this is a common one for parents, like, oh, well, you would be a better parent if you would just spend this time with your kids and not spend time writing because you're a selfish parent, which, you know, is all kinds of manipulation by the small self. So this is important, you know, again, whether you engage and work with us or find another way to do what you need to do, there are ways, very clear ways to support yourself, to find your voice and your passion, and it is in connecting with that voice and passion that you will be able to create space for yourself and to be able to write and to be able to, this is about kickstarting, but Linda Joy and I are way more than just about kickstarting. We're about follow through and finishing and really getting this thing done. So we're going to transition, is our last little thing here is about reconnecting to the heart of your story and what moves you. It's so much about what I just said. It's really our belief system. Linda Joy, I know you're you're 110% with me on this.
The heart thing is, everybody that I've ever met that was interested in writing a memoir, and this may not be representative of the whole world, but I think it is most people, have had a heart desire to express themselves and to share something. And that whole thing that you said, Brooke, about the memoir is calling to you. I've told this story before where I tried to abandon my memoir quite a lot for many years. I would leave it for a year, 9 months. All my inner critic stuff was operating. Plus, I had a very critical family, and so it would really get on my mind. But it wouldn't leave me alone. And so, as I've told Brooke, one day I pretended that I turned around and faced it, basically. It felt like it was chasing me. And I turned around and faced this pretend thing chasing me in my living room, and I said, okay, fine. I will finish you, and then will you please leave me alone? I will finish you, okay? And it quit chasing me at that point, and I did. So sometimes that's what it takes, is this dramatic thing to make you move forward.
Well, and it's also such a powerful story, and I've heard this story so many times now that we've been teaching together, but I love it every time because I think it's just it's universal, and it's something that if you're in this class, you probably have had the experience of turning your back on your memoir at some point and just trying to figure out, how am I going to be in relationship in a different way? And that is connecting to the heart. It is connecting to what matters. It is about authenticity. I say that people who really resonate with memoir resonate when it comes from the heart place. And so it is all about heart, and then there's all the discipline and learning and, wading through the muddy middle and the crap that goes along with it. But there is, the absolute most rewarding thing is getting, even if it's just a draft, I have to say, it's incredibly rewarding to finish that draft. And then maybe you need to go back in and work on your revisions, most likely you do. But this is a huge, huge accomplishment. And for so many people, it's on that list of things that you really want to do in your lifetime. And so we hope that you will.
I want to incorporate something that someone is saying in the question feed, and we'll get to some of the other ones. But someone said, what if there are so many memoirs on the topic of what you're writing about? And we know, yes, you're going to find many novels and many memoirs with similar topics or themes, but everybody's story is unique. You are unique. You have a different story than someone else. And so the deal is to find ways to make your story interesting, learn the craft that will make it come across as unique and interesting. And before you've written it, there's a lot you don't know about your story. Even if you know what the topic is or the theme, you need to give your story a chance to be born before that's an inner critic voice in a way. But yes, it's realistically based. So you just need to have that faith that it will be a unique story unlike any other.
Yeah, that's a really valuable point, and it's a great thing to point out, that it is an example of all the ways in which we keep ourselves back. If you start to notice the messaging that it doesn't matter, there are too many other people, she's a better writer than I am, why is anyone going to care? It's like we hear it all the time, so we can say, oh, yeah, there it is again, but it's so incorporated into who you are that sometimes you can't even separate it out from yourself, and part of the the practice then is to tease out, what are those voices that are in essence preventing you from moving forward, like I said, because they're trying to keep you small. And you may be in battle with yourself on that point for a little while, but I promise you that you will find freedom if you keep working at it. Again, that's so much what we're about, and all the ways in which we're incorporating. This is not just about your memoir. This is about your life. And I think that's one of the secrets, actually, that Linda and I both know very well, which is that memoir writing is inextricable from your life. You can't commit to writing a memoir and think that you're just going to do it in this isolated little compartment. You don't, because it will break you open. It will mess with you. It will make you feel like you're soaring on cloud 9, and you don't get to just go, oh, this is confined to this little writing space that I have tonight. It's going to impact you. It's going to change you, and it's going to transform you. So it's really, really powerful, and absolutely something to stick with. It's worth it.
I want to bring in the whole idea of it's about writing a memoir. Writing anything is about connecting with your creativity. And if you're on this call, you're interested in creativity. You're interested in creating something. Wherever you are on the path, everyone's in a different place. And my background was in art and music. And so what I discovered is that having learned how to practice the piano for many hours or the cello for many hours, I was able to bring some of that, the craft of practicing, into my writing life and realize that it's comparable to other arts. I also did painting and sculpture and etching, and it was all about process, that the early strokes of a painting have nothing to do with what finally happens. And I used to think that I needed to know how the painting was supposed to turn out when I started, and I found out that the interesting and exciting thing about painting, different than music, I learned classical music, and so it was already written. I had to interpret it and learn how to play it. But with painting, it was a process from beginning to end. You don't know how it's going to turn out, and you follow along in this process, and that's the way it is with writing. It's your creative process that we're asking or supporting you in connecting with.
Absolutely. Okay, we're getting so many good questions, and we really want to open up to answering some of those. And we also want to take an opportunity, like we mentioned at the beginning, just to tell you about what we're doing this fall, to tell you a little bit more about our curriculum, which is at writeyourmemoirin6months.com. So we want to share with you that we're teaching 2 fall classes this fall. I'll just go ahead and come to this page. Kickstart Your Memoir. If you enjoyed the class tonight and you're on the webinar, you can sign up for the $89 rate. That's 4 weeks for $89. We particularly want to keep the price point low on these classes. Like we said, a lot of it is just about the accountability, having a place where for 1 month straight you're thinking about your memoir and making time to write. It is a webinar format just like this one, and we take questions and answers at the end like we will tonight. Probably tonight we're just going to answer questions because there's so many people on the line in the question box, but usually in the calls we call on people. You have an opportunity to ask specific questions about what's going on with you. And then the other class that we're teaching this fall is Eat, Pray, Love. We had an amazingly successful course in the spring that was all about teaching wild. And so we decided that every semester, twice a year, in the spring and the fall, we're going to teach a new memoir. And we want them to be best-selling memoirs. We want them to be memoirs that everyone has read and resonated with. And so the Kickstart class starts next week, and we would love to have you join us for 4 weeks. The first one is on Monday the 16th, and Eat, Pray, Love is going to be later in the fall in November. So we encourage you to take a look at those. And then we also want to offer you, for anyone who is excited about the prospect of a 6-month course with us, we're in the middle of our second go-round. We have a great group of people that we're leading through this, and we've already completed our first 6-month course in the beginning of this year, or rather, is that right?
At the end of last
End of last year, thank you. So yeah, this 6 months, it lasts the full 6 months. So those students stick with us. It's a very intensive mentorship process. You get partnered with one of us. Specifically, we read your content and we comment on your content, and you're in a class that is capped at 14 people. You get to know the students in your class. There's a private Facebook group. There's all kinds of incentives and bonuses and things that are on the project details page on our site. And tonight we're giving anyone who enrolls in that $100 off just for signing up tonight, so automatically shave off $100 off the price point. And then for anyone, this is true, that if you pay in 1 or 2 installments, you get an additional $100 off. So if you were to sign up for tonight, you would shave $200 off of that course. And the math is on the page. You can check it out just in terms of what it costs. You pay a deposit tonight, to secure your class, and we're getting started in December. We have one orientation call in December just to kind of lock in what the class is about, and then we'll get going in January, and it will be January through June with the goal of completing your memoir, but also really a lot of emotional support, a lot of talking through process and craft. It's a very nuanced, and tailor-made course, and it's been super successful, so we're excited to be able to share it, continue to share it.
I tell people I wish I'd had this when I was writing my memoir, because it took me more than a decade to finish it, but part of what I've been teaching for quite a few years, and now Brooke and I are teaching together, are the skills and the craft mixed with the process, development of the process of writing a memoir. That helps a person get done, and also write it in such a way that it has a chance of being a really excellent first draft. I mean, a first draft doesn't have to be completely fragmented, or it can be very close to just needing a good edit to be a finished book. And everybody is different about that. Some people need more time, of course. I mean, most people don't completely finish a whole book ready to publish it in 6 months, although I think some of our people got really close. But to get through that first draft, once you have it all on the page, then you know what it is you need to work on. You see the story. It's not just living in your head anymore.
Yeah, well, and 2 of the people from our first class are agented now and shopping their proposals. So it is in fact quite motivating, and just also being in a journey with others who are going through that process, and people obviously are at all different stages, but it's been very exciting to see, just all the ways in which people are making huge leaps and bounds, because like we said, there's just a lot of craft to know. And so, yeah, either way, we hope that you'll join us either for Kickstart, just for the 1-month class, which is a really fun and, kind of shot in the arm kind of class, and or the longer class. And we want to take the rest of our time tonight for questions. And there are lots of good questions here, so I don't know that we're going to get to everything. I think, Linda Joy, why don't we just kind of go back and forth, grabbing the questions that that feel like we'd like to answer them. Let me know if you see one. I'm going to go ahead and answer this question from Francis. Is there a time to set the writing aside and let it sit to get perspective on the draft, and how do you do it without losing momentum? Absolutely. Yes, there's time to get perspective on the draft, and Linda Joy talks about this a lot, that it sometimes is important to give yourself a legitimate break. I mean, there may come breaking points. There may come points where pushing isn't going to work, where you need to legitimately give yourself some time off. And we really try to work with students in the class around that. There are definitely people who hit big walls, and people in our class who are dealing with really traumatic content too. And whether it's simply because you need perspective, or because you're in the throes of reliving some pretty difficult points in your life, those moments of perspective are really important. And so it's a great question, Francis. How do you do that without losing momentum? I think you have to tend to yourself, and certainly listen to what you're being called to do, but also simultaneously, do the thing of, like Linda Joy again suggests, writing into something positive, or you know, maybe printing out your manuscript and reading it, you know, or setting a very specified time away from your manuscript, like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and not just an indefinite thing that doesn't have any you know, any end in sight, so that you're leaving it for 6 months, for instance.
Yeah, right. I agree. We have a really good question. We have more than one person asking different versions of this, but it has to do with what to do with the family. And, you know, if different family members are going to resist, you know, the story that the person has written. So what we all tell you to do is, what we believe is that you need to feel strong in your own voice and your own story. And we know that everybody, I think about a family like a pie. You know, you look at the pie and you cut the pie in 6 or 8 different pieces. And every piece of pie looks toward the center of that pie from a different angle, from a different point of view. Everybody sees and interprets things differently. Now, I mean, sometimes you'll find agreement, but people who grow up in the same house with the same parents can write about completely opposite childhoods, and it's all true. It's all true from their point of view. So that's one piece, is that your truth is your truth. Not that people can't come up and say, well, actually, on that date we went to the park instead of the swimming pool. I mean, you may have certain things that maybe they disagree with, and we'll see if they matter or not. I mean, memory is not perfect, but it is still your memory, and it is your story, and you just need to do your very best with that. The other piece of this question has to do with, when do you tell your family? Well, I suggest, I think we both agree on this, that for a long period of time while you're figuring out what you want to say, why raise their anxiety about it and your own? Just write your story for a period of time without announcing it, unless they live with you and they're going to see what you're writing, and even then you need to keep it private if you can. If they say, oh, you were writing a memoir, did you stop? You can say, well, I'm just writing a bunch of different things right now, and I'll let you know how it's going later. I mean, you can be vague and not actually out and out lie to your family, but it's very important to create what I call a sacred safe space, so that you can keep writing, because we have our own inner critics, no matter whether the family's involved or not. It's hard enough to get the story down and feel strong enough that we can just say it, and we really need to be able to do that in order to get the memoir written.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, and I'll move on to see if we can get to however many questions we can before the end of the hour here. Liz asks, I have a first draft of a memoir. Will the 6-month course be effective in helping me rewrite the manuscript and hopefully finish? And so everyone is coming to our class in from different places, I have to say. I mean, we have people who have complete drafts, and they're, in some ways I think those people have a leg up, because you're learning new craft or re-familiarizing yourself with craft. And if you have a complete draft, then maybe you are doing the overlaying process that Linda Joy mentioned, you know, where you're like, oh, my characters could be stronger here, or wow, I haven't really done a good job of delineating my scenes, or I didn't really understand transitions in the way that I do now, and so now my transitions are going to be stronger. I mean, really, we do a lot of process, but we do a lot of craft. And for a saleable memoir, I'm not going to underplay the importance of craft. You know, there's a lot of really important things that need to be done for a memoir to be saleable. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about the difference between showing and telling, good dialogue, good scene writing, sensory detail. I mean, there's just a lot to learn, which is why there is ample content for a 6-month course. And people come with, you know, what they think are complete memoirs, and then they end up changing course. Or people come basically with an inventory of, I've written, you know, tons and tons and tons of words, but basically what I have is, you know, 33 pieces of a quilt, and I need to figure out how can I possibly stitch these things together. And so we think that no matter where you're at, you know, if the goal is to complete and to finish, you know, whether you're just starting and you have nothing, or you have a full draft, then you will benefit for sure. So
Someone is asking about, all that is good. Someone is asking a question we get a lot about from memoir writers is about using your journals. And, journals are a great way to dip into what you authentically felt in very real time when you were writing it. And for some people this is helpful, but writing from a journal, if some people have asked me, well, what if I just copy down what's in my journal? Is that a memoir? And the answer is no. A journal is written in the now of a certain time with a very, very interior perspective. For instance, in journals, we aren't usually spending a lot of time describing a scene or a situation or describing a character because we already know who they are and we already know where we were, we already know what it looks like, and we don't need to do all that. We're just going for the feelings mostly in a journal, unless you're writing stories in your journal, and then that's different. But a memoir is a story. A memoir is a created, crafted, developed work based on what really happened, where there's dialogue and scenes and character development, an arc, there's a plot, and it is created and crafted. So that's the difference between journals and memoirs. And one more question has to do with what if you're writing about someone else's story and your experience with that other person. Well, in a first person, memoir is first person. In your memoir, you may write about your experiences with other people. But if you, like a lot of people saying, well, I'm writing my grandmother's memoir. Well, no, you're actually writing your memoir and how your grandmother's life or her story interacts with yours. She's the only one who can write her own memoir, but you can include her story and you can make it very real and very interesting. And there's techniques for that, and we do talk about this because quite a few people are wanting to do these kinds of stories.
Yeah, and I think I'll add on to that, that a lot of people, what happens whether they come to our short courses or our long courses is sort of getting an education on memoir. What is memoir? A lot of times people discover that what they're writing is bigger than a memoir, and that they need to narrow their scope, because memoir really is a slice of life kind of writing experience. You're not supposed to write your entire life, or you're in fact writing an autobiography. And so we make a distinction about that. And while it can be difficult sometimes for some memoir writers to realize, like, oh, in fact, I'm writing an autobiography, and why does that matter, right? What is memoir? What is this genre that I'm trying to create? And because we're talking about things in the context of themes, THEMES, and structure, there is a whole body of memoir work, and a way that memoir works, and certainly if you want to sell your memoir, you have to understand that. And so much of that can in fact sort of shift your understanding of memoir, and I think generally in a positive way. So I just wanted to plug that. And then I also just there's a couple of questions about clarifying the courses. So I'm just going to take a quick second to say that the Eat, Pray, Love course is a 4-week course. And it's modeled off of the class that we taught in the spring, which was the Wild class. And so we're basically going to be teaching you all about what did Elizabeth Gilbert do that worked, her own structure. She wrote a formulaic memoir, the scenes. I think it can be really helpful to learn how to write memoir by looking at how does someone else effectively do scenes and transitions, how does someone else structure their memoir, so that you really begin to understand what that's about and how to emulate, someone who in fact is a best-selling writer, and so that's going to be, a very specific kind of learning. And then the Kickstarter class is also a 4-week class, as I mentioned. So those are, just 4 weeks, like I said, shots in the arm kinds of things, and they're $89. And then the longer course, the 6-month course, will start in January, and it's $14.95, but you get $200 off if you sign up tonight and pay in 1 or 2 installments. So that brings it down to $12.95. And like I said, the math is on the site, but basically what that ends up with after you pay the deposit is $166 a month. approximately. So it's a pretty reasonable course for the long run.
Yeah, and people can pay monthly and instead of big chunks, and so there's just ways to do that. You can contact. How do people reach you, Brooke, to get the details of the finance?
Yeah, our email is on the site, or you can just hit reply to the webinar invitation that you got tonight. So I'm also like really easy to contact on on almost any of my sites. My contact information is there, so feel free to email and we'll get this figured out.
Well, there's one last thing that somebody brought up that I think is very important for memoir writers, and that has to do with the secrets in the family and what will happen if those secrets are revealed. And again, we look at there's writing that you need to do for yourself, the things you need to sort out, or feelings and resentments that you may want to explore. And in the teaching I've done for many years has focused a lot on writing as healing as well as learning craft. But in our first draft, a lot of times we need to put some things in there that later we can look at and say, oh, okay, now do I want to publish this in this way? I had to do that with my memoir, and I ended up changing how I wrote certain very confrontive things or painful things, where I changed how I wrote it. I didn't leave it all out, but I didn't hit people right between the eyes with it either. And so there's ways to use craft to help you with some of those questions. But, you know, a lot of times when people write their story out later, they feel like, well, okay, I can leave that part out, or I can say it this way instead of the way that I've been feeling it for 10 years. So, again, that's part of the process. We can't tell you what to include or not include, and we don't try. But we just want to let you know that there is a layered process, and sometimes it's very healing to get that first draft done and then see where you are.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much. We're grateful for your time tonight, taking the time to be here and listen to us. We would love to see you in our class. Join us, you know, like we said, just even if you don't want to or can't, you can sign up. I know a lot of you are already signed up for the Write Your Memoir in 6 Months newsletter, but it's pretty cool because you get 10 little pieces of inspiration writing from Linda, Joy, and I. When you sign up for that, it comes into your email over the period of a month. I think you get 10 emails from us that are meant to be kind of like an inspiration campaign. So when you sign up on our homepage, you can do that. You know, both of us do private coaching, so if that's where you feel like you're at, by all means, feel free to contact us directly. My site is at warnercoaching.com, and Linda, yours is the Memories and Memoirs site.
Yeah, my coaching is listed on memoriesandmemoirs.com, which is about to grow into a new design this week. But you can contact me there, and my email is lindajoy@namw.org. And please check out the National Association of Memoir Writers and sign up for our newsletter. There's always a lot happening over there.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you all again for tonight, and we will see you along the way.
Thank you all for being here with us, and good luck. And as we say at NAMW, be brave, write your story. Bye-bye.
Right on. Good night.
Bye-bye.